to start. So, all right. I can't see you. I can see your name. And Mike's there, but I can't see his picture either, but I can see Alicia's there. All right. Can you hear me, Mike? Can you hear me, Alicia? Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't hear
Awesome.
Mike and I can't see Benita, but that's all right. I'll get started anyway. All right. Well, I want to, first of all, thank everybody for being on here today. And seeing as it's February 18th, it's cold. This morning up here in Idaho, it was 12 degrees. And I know there's other parts of the country that has got, 12 or even lower. Last week we were in actually South Dakota. It was 37 below on one day. Now, 37 below is cold. 20 below is cold. It seems like it's the same. It's just dang cold. So hopefully you're staying warm, and those that are struggling, our thoughts and our wishes or prayers with you. Want everybody to be safe, and let's get through this stuff. Let's get through it together, and hopefully everything works out okay. Today we're going to talk about arrows. Now, arrows, as everybody knows, that's part of our arsenal with shooting a bow. You've got target, you've got bow hunting. So you've got two different types of a target: a live target, which is an animal, and a stationary target, which is for competition or just practice. When you are shooting an arrow, we want to make sure that we get everything we possibly can out of that arrow. We make sure we've got the right velocity, make sure we've got the right accuracy with that arrow, make sure that we're using the right type of arrow with the type of shooting that we're using, or we're doing a hunting and target. You can use the same type, and that's what I'm going to talk about. We can kind of cross over. Now, when you go to buy an arrow, and are there good arrow manufacturers out there? Absolutely. But there are some differences in every manufacturer on the arrows that they sell. Now, everybody, and you might know this, but maybe you don't, but say I'm going to go buy some tires. So I'm going to buy some tires. I can go down and I can buy a tire for $100 that have maybe 25,000 miles warranty on it. So what that means is after 25,000 miles, those tires are pretty well worn out. Or I can buy a $150 tire and I can get 50,000 miles. So it's not that I can buy for double the 100 and get 50,000. It's generally just about half. So how I can kind of run this on a parallel compared to arrows is you've got arrows that are a good price. I'm not saying you can't use those. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of the differences. An arrow that is more economically challenged. So, those arrows are built in a way to keep the price down, but you're going to sacrifice a little bit on a couple of things. One will be, they call it the tolerances, and they generally come on your arrows a 001 or 003. And what that means is the straightness, how straight the arrows are. Now I've got a little rotating spinner, an arrow spinner right here in front of me. Hopefully you can see a little bit on how it works. But when you spin that arrow, you can kind of see that it doesn't wobble. You don't want an arrow to wobble. What you want that arrow to do is to spin as straight as it possibly can, so there's no wobble to it. Now I'm going to kind of compare that to an arrow flight. When you shoot an arrow, it's called an archer's paradox. And what that means is when you shoot the arrow, an arrow just doesn't come away from a bow and it's just dialed right in. What it does is you've got to remember, you're pushing that string on the arrow. You got to weight on the other end. So I'll kind of show you. Here I've got a field tip. But as it pushes that arrow from the end, it's going to cause that arrow to have a little bit of flex. Now, arrows have to have flex, but the quicker the flex comes out, the more accurate that arrow is. So back to what I was talking about with the tires. If you shoot a better grade arrow, it's worth the money in the long run, in that it's going to fly truer, it's going to get the performance out of it, and you're going to be more happy with that arrow. Think about this. You spend the money to fletch it, you spend the money to cut it, and you spend your time and effort in shooting and practicing with that arrow. So, you need to tend to come up and use as good an arrow as you possibly can afford. Do you need to spend a lot of money? No, because there's all good arrows out there on the market. Now, Pro-Tracker, we've actually got an arrow line. We have micros and we have our regular standard arrow, 6.5, and then they go down to 166. So your micros are a smaller diameter, and we have one other type arrow, and it's in our Deadly series, and it's called the Cobra. And what the Cobra arrow is on this end, it's the same diameter, 6.5, and as it goes down towards the end of the shaft, it actually goes down into a micro. And what that will do is, upon impact, you've already have a pilot hole with that broadhead into the animal, but there's less drag as that arrow goes through into the animal. That equates to more penetration, so that you can have that momentum dialed in to the front of your arrow for maximum penetration accuracy, and that equates into momentum. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit. When you practice with arrows, it's good to practice with field tips. Practice until you've got them dialed in, you know how they're flying. Now, the length of your arrow depends on how it's going to fly. If it's too long of an arrow, you'll tend to have a little more flex before it gets to the target. If it's too short, then it increases the spine of the arrow, which in a way, it's better to have too much spine than not enough. Because too much spine, it'll still won't have that wobble, but you'll have the momentum. So we equate that to one of the other. It's better to err on the side of caution than err on the side of taking a chance. Now, after you've dialed that arrow in, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on the 3K that we've got. This is a 3K woven shaft arrow that is built strong and accurate. Now, this is one of your better grade hunting arrows. This is the top of the line. But they're not expensive. They're not expensive. But what you want to do is you want to practice with your field tip till you get them dialed in. Now, a lot of times you'll hear manufacturers will tell you, hey, I can use our broadheads and they'll shoot just like field tips. And I will agree to a point. They fly. But will they hit the same place? Most of the time it won't. So you have to practice with your favorite broadhead. You have to practice. So what you'll do is you'll got them dialed in. So you've got them in, say a 4 or 5 inch circle. And then that's with your field tips. Then your broadheads, you want to put those on, and you might have to adjust them a little bit. Nothing comes out of the box 100% just like. When you hear just like, that means they're close. They're close. But you still have to do your practice. Now, is there anything wrong with practice? Absolutely not. Everybody should practice. We practice every day in our life. Practice being polite, practice being nice. Just make it part of your regime. Same thing with practicing on archery. Get into that rhythm. Get into where, it all falls into place. Same knock point, same the way you reach out. Same thing as you shoot. You don't want to punch it too hard and too fast because then I'll tend to pull your bow. So kind of go through the same things. Now, a micro arrow is a small diameter shaft. And in our deadly series, we have one called the Sidewinder, which is used for target, but also it's used for hunting. And I can tell you why. Our arrows tend to lean a little bit on the heavier side. We did that design on purpose. By having that arrow a little bit stronger, a little bit thicker walls, it makes it a little bit heavier, but it's not the quickness. You know, if you're shooting out there 100, 110 yards, you know, that'll work to a point, but you still want to have that momentum with that weight to carry it into the animal farther. If you don't have weight, you tend to not have as much penetration that you might possibly need. Now, as a woman or a younger archer, you know, youth, with weight, use that on the side of caution. The same thing, it helps you with accuracy, penetration, momentum. Now, Pro-Tracker is, you know, prided ourselves, and I hate using that word because it sounds like we're being very vain, but I'm telling you the truth. Pro-Tracker, by using that weight, and we have products, we call them the bad boys. It's a weighted sleeve that slides over the shaft of any arrow, and it builds up that front FOC, front of center, so that you still have that momentum, penetration, and accuracy. So you have more pop. Now, arrows, back to using your arrows, is on your broadheads. Is an expandable better than a fixed? Is a fixed better than a 3-blade, better than a 2-blade? It's back to the Ford, Dodge, Chevy. They all serve a purpose. They all do the same thing. It's just that whatever you have success with, you know, unless you're really forced to use something different, stay with what you're familiar with and what you know works. Because a lot of times in archery and certain things, a lot of it's right here. If you think it's not going to work, generally it won't work because you're kind of telling yourself it's going to fail. But if you work at it, do the same mechanics, same release, do it the same way, make sure that your arrows are nocked the same way. I mean, then you get into that rhythm. And in a rhythm, you get better results. If you don't, it could be all over the place in archery and even in your life. Remember, keep the rhythm consistent. Make sure it's consistent. Pro-Tracker, back to what we're talking about with our weight forward and with our arrows. We have, in our deadly series, we have 2 micros, and we have our new signature arrow, which is called the Cobra. And once again, if you'll take those arrows and put them on our spinner, I'll grab it, and you just rotate them, you know, you've got that, they fly and they shoot very, very well. Now, spine is your friend. Weight is your friend. If you shoot too light of an arrow, the archer's paradox, coming back to that, as it goes through the arrow and flexes, upon impacting your arrow and your target, whether it's an animal or a target, sometimes instead of being straight on, will be on a little bit of an angle. That's why when you get up to your target, if you ever see an arrow that's kind of off a little bit, you know that something is just a little bit off on that arrow. It could be you don't have enough spine to it. It's too long of an arrow. We have found that all arrows fly a little bit better if they're just maybe 2.5 to maybe 3 inches out in front of your rest. When they're out in front, then that's when they fly a little more true. Pro-Tracker, through trial and error, through experimentation, their arrows, and this is any arrow, but we found that if we brought our own type of arrow out, we could control a little bit about what we like about all these other arrows that we've tested through the years to incorporate and use it in the development and building of our arrows manufactured by Pro-Tracker. back to what I was talking a little bit about. I kind of get off just a hair, but if you don't use the right spine, the right front of center, your arrows are not going to perform the way they want. So practice. This all comes in practice. Also, arrows are used, and you want to make sure they do this, fly as well as they possibly can with, let's pick on guys. So some guys can shoot 90-pound draw weight, and that is like, holy cow, 90 pounds. And then some, going to shoot 55 or 60, kind of like myself. But it's been shown that it's not necessarily the poundage you pull out back on your bow, but it's when you got all the mechanics, everything is lined up. You got the weight, you got the spine correctly, you got the right broadhead, and you have to make sure you have a good shot on an animal. Just because you have 3 of the 4 doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to work. So if you do take a shot, make sure that it's a good ethical shot and it's the best you possibly can do. Think about this. If I shot an animal and I shoot it farther back, more maybe or into the rump, do you think it's going to die quicker, or it's going to struggle just a little bit because haven't really hit the vitals? That's why practice, 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 so that you know where the vitals are, and using the right equipment, you can get that penetration momentum. Pro-Tracker has good products. Pro-Tracker has products out on the market that nobody else has. We're the only one that has a weighted sleeve that'll fit any arrow. Doesn't matter what brand it is, this will work. Pro-Tracker has hours and hours and thousands of hours of testing all of their products before they're brought out on the market. Our products aren't just a whim, make something and bring it out and see if people like it. They're tried, they're true, and true. True is not a word, I don't think, but they are true in that we've hunted with them, we've shot targets with them, we've had other people use them and give us reviews, and everything we've done is tried to be at the top. If we saw a problem, we took care of the problem before we put it out on the market. We're continually testing and making sure things are exactly where they should be. In closing, I want to make sure that everybody understands arrows are important. Spine, the weight, make sure that they're built correctly. If you don't have the right spine, especially with these bows now, you can actually have an arrow blow up on you. And you don't want to have an arrow explode because, first of all, you don't want to get hurt. Second, whatever you're shooting, you want to make sure it's either in the target where it's supposed to be, or that you're going to have a good, clean, ethical kill into that animal. So if you've got any questions, you can call myself in our office, or you can get my number, 801-608-0190, and ask me any question, and I will do the best I can to answer that. If not, I will find an answer for you. So again, I want to thank everybody that's on today with us, and hopefully that you'll watch us and kind of learn from this, because we all learn every day when we do things. I want to thank you again. Appreciate your time. Stay safe and stay warm.